All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling Python Tkinter frames.
Oh,
You're looking to really get a handle on how to use Tkinter frames, maybe for building out some really cool GUIs.
yeah,
And while frames might not sound super exciting at first,
right.
trust me, they're they're really the secret sauce to making your GUIs look amazing and super user friendly. It's like when you have all your clothes just tossed in a drawer versus like neatly organized, shirts here, pants there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So a Tkinter frame is basically a container widget. It lets you group a bunch of other widgets together,
Okay.
buttons, text boxes, images, all that stuff, and then control precisely how they're arranged within your window.
So it's less about the frames themselves and more about kind of what you can do with them. They're the foundation, the,
Yeah.
the building blocks for the rest of your GUI. Okay, I'm with you so far. So what else makes them so special?
Well, let's start with the basics, I guess. Size, borders, and backgrounds. All of these can be customized to really polish up the look of your GUI. You have precise control over the size of your frames, ensuring your layout looks exactly how you envision it.
Looking at the code that you sent us, I see you can control the size with width and height. And then there's this interesting little trick. Expand, true, with the pack layout manager.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
So the Pack Layout Manager is one of the ways that Tkinter lets you arrange widgets.
Right.
And setting span true with Pack allows the frame to fill all the available space. So think of it like a chameleon adapting to its surroundings.
Oh, that's brilliant for making your layouts responsive. They'll adjust nicely if the user resizes the window instead of staying fixed and then potentially looking awkward. So no rigid boxes.
Got it. What about borders? I see something here about highlight background and highlight thickness.
Yeah. Those let you add visual flair and separation between different sections of your GUI.
Yeah.
Imagine you've got a form with multiple categories.
Using borders around the frames is like drawing lines between those sections.
Okay.
Makes it crystal clear for the user what's going on.
So it's not just about looking pretty, it's about making the whole thing easier to understand, form and function all working together. Okay, and of course, no GUI would be complete without a touch of color. You can set the frame's background color with background. You can even use hex codes if you want to get really fancy.
Yeah, a well-chosen color palette can make a huge difference for the user. But remember, clarity is key here. You want colors that complement each other and don't create a visual mess. So no blinding neon green for our listeners' GUIs, right?
Definitely not. I value my eyesight way too much for that. But this is all kind of about appearances so far. Can we actually put things inside these frames? I mean, the whole point is to organize buttons and images and stuff, right?
Absolutely. Frames are like those Russian nesting dolls.
Oh,
You can
yeah.
put all sorts of widgets inside of them. Buttons, text entries, labels, even other frames.
Oh, whoa.
And your code even shows how to add images using tables. Buttons can hold images too. This opens up a world of possibilities for creating really complex and interactive designs, all neatly arranged thanks to the power of frames.
Wait, hold on. Frames inside frames. Isn't that going a bit too far?
Not at all. It's like chapters in a book. Imagine a multi-frame layout, a top frame for an image, a middle frame for, let's say, user input,
Right.
and a bottom frame for some extra info.
Gotcha.
It's a really classic way to structure an application. That's the beauty of nested frames. They let you build these complex GUIs that are still well organized and easy to understand.
Okay, so it's not about avoiding complexity. It's about managing complexity.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And it probably makes your code much cleaner and easier to work with, too.
Exactly. By breaking your GUI into these smaller self-contained units, you're making your life as a developer much, much easier.
Yeah.
But beyond just organizing things, frames have a bunch of other cool tricks up their sleeve.
Let's talk about some of the finer points of customization
Right.
in part 2 of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm ready to see what else these frames can do. We'll be back in just a bit to uncover even more Tkinter frame secrets. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, join us for a series of tutorials on how to develop applications using our Python Tkinter, and we will be using PyInstaller to create the standalone GUI applications where you can integrate it with a database, so you can store, add, modify data. So the database can be SQLite or MySQL or any other database. So this is a self-contained built-in application, so a single application can be distributed and it doesn't require a Python installer or Python to run on it. It can directly run in your application or in your operating system. So Stay tuned to learn more about this.
Okay, we're back and ready to dive a little deeper into the wonderful world of Tkinter frames. Before the break, we were talking about how frames can be nested
Right.
to create, these organized layouts, almost like chapters in a book.
Right, right.
Wow.
And that example from your source material with the top, middle, and bottom sections,
Yeah.
it's not just about static layouts. You can actually make them dynamic.
So now you mean like things moving around on their own?
Exactly.
That's what I call interesting.
Yeah, your source code had that little snippet showing how you can actually remove and restore a frame just using button clicks. The grid forget method is kind of the key here.
Okay.
Think of it like making a frame temporarily invisible without actually getting rid of it completely.
So it's like lurking there in the background, ready to reappear on command. That's pretty cool. I'm already imagining all sorts of possibilities. Like, what if you had a settings panel that like slides in and out when you click a button?
Yeah. Or how about like a progress bar that only pops up during a long process?
Right.
That's the power you're gaining here, making truly interactive GUIs where things appear and disappear as needed. And it's not just about hiding and showing. You can also use the grid method to reposition frames on the fly.
So you're not stuck with the initial layout?
Nope.
You can like rearrange things on the fly, like a digital puzzle. That's super flexible.
Exactly.
But wouldn't all this moving around make the GUI feel kind of chaotic?
That's where another crucial aspect of frames comes in. Separators.
Oh, right. Separator.
Remember, your source material really emphasized how important those are.
Yes. Those visual dividers. The source mentioned using thin frames, maybe with different colors, or those 3D relief patterns we talked about before.
Precisely. Imagine a form with a bunch of input fields.
Right.
Using separators between each field makes it way easier to read.
Okay.
It's subtle, but so effective for guiding the user's eye and making the layout feel less cramped.
Yeah, it's like adding punctuation to a sentence.
Yes.
Those little things make a world of difference.
For sure.
But too many separators might make things too busy, right?
You're right. Is there a balance to strike?
Absolutely. You want to use them thoughtfully. Just enough to add clarity, without creating clutter.
Right.
It's all about that sweet spot where form meets function.
Speaking of form and function, let's go back to nested frames for a moment.
Ooh, yes, frames within frames, like those Russian dolls. Are we about to go even deeper into the nesting game?
Let's say you're making a music player app.
Yeah.
You might have a main frame that holds, everything. Playback controls, the playlist, a volume slider.
Right.
But then within that main frame, you could have these nested frames, one specifically for the playback controls, another for the playlist display, and so on.
So it's like breaking down the layout into these smaller, self-contained units.
Yeah.
That must make the code so much easier to manage.
Exactly. It's like organizing your computer files into folders and subfolders.
Right.
And just like you can move files between folders, you can move widgets between frames as needed. Incredible flexibility. And don't forget, this nesting creates a visual hierarchy that reflects the logic of your GUI.
Yeah.
Which is, that's a core principle of good design.
This is making me realize how much actually goes into building a truly, user-friendly interface. You're not just like throwing widgets on a screen, you're crafting an experience. It's like the difference between like a messy handwritten note
Right.
and a beautifully typeset document.
You got it. Tkinter frames are the tools that let you achieve that level of polish and organization. They empower you to really think about the user's journey through your GUI.
Okay, my mind is officially blown, but we still have so much to cover.
Yeah.
Is there anything else in the source material that just like screams must discuss?
Absolutely. We've talked about, the basics, the layout, the dynamic stuff, even nested structures, but there's this whole other layer of control that I think we really need to explore. Configuration options.
Oh yes, the config method.
Yeah.
We skimmed over it earlier, but I have a feeling there's a lot more to it.
There is.
I'm ready to unlock the full potential of Tkinter frames.
Okay.
Are you ready to jump into that rabbit hole of customization?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our Tkinter frames deep dive.
Awesome.
And I am ready to explore this config method you mentioned. It sounds like we're about to unlock a whole new level of control over these frames.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Think of config as like your master key to fine-tuning.
Okay.
Every little detail.
Yeah.
We already talked about some of the more obvious options like width, height, background,
Right, right.
but there are some real hidden gems in there that can really make your GUI stand out.
Hidden gems, you say? Now you've got me really intrigued. What kind of treasures are we talking about here?
Well, let's start with padding. Using PadX and Paddy,
Okay.
you can add extra space around the widgets inside a frame. Just gives everything a bit of breathing room.
So instead of all the buttons and labels being all crammed together,
Oh,
you
yeah.
can create some like visual separation. That
Exactly.
would definitely make the GUI feel less cluttered.
It's a subtle touch, but it can have a huge impact on readability and just like the overall polish of your design. Another really cool option is cursor customization.
Oh yeah.
Using cursor.
Yeah, in my source material, there's an example where hovering over a frame changes the cursor to a little boat icon.
Oh, nice.
It's playful, but I can see how customizing the cursor could be useful too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about providing that visual feedback to the user.
Right.
A hand cursor, for example, might suggest that an element is clickable.
Right.
These little hints can really make the interface way more intuitive.
Okay.
And speaking of subtle visual cues, there's also the relief option,
Right. Relief.
which we touched on briefly before.
Yeah, relief lets you give frames those 3D effects, like raised borders,
Just on
open borders, that kind of thing.
It adds that visual depth and interest without being too flashy.
Right.
And here's a cool thing. You can actually use relief styles to visually group related elements.
Oh.
So even if the frames aren't right next to each other, using the same relief style can subtly suggest that they belong together.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
So it's another way to kind of like guide the user's eye and create that visual hierarchy within the GUI.
For sure.
I'm starting to realize that these seemingly small details can make a huge difference in the overall user experience.
You're getting it. Good GUI design is all about this interplay between, like the big picture, the little details, and Tkinter frames with all of their flexibility and configuration options.
Yeah.
are just the perfect tool for finding that balance.
I have to say I'm feeling a lot more confident about tackling my own GUI projects now. We've really gone deep on Tkinter frames from, like the basic concepts
Yeah.
to these like really advanced customization techniques.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Likewise.
And remember, Tkinter is such a great starting point for GUI development in Python. It's relatively, easy to learn, but it's got a surprising amount of power under the hood.
And for me, the biggest takeaway is that frames are so much more than just containers. They're really they're the foundation for building, well-structured, visually appealing, and interactive GUIs.
You said it. So to our listener who shared this great source material,
Yeah.
what kind of amazing interactive applications are you going to build now that you've mastered Tkinter frames? A custom music player, a data visualization dashboard.
Oh, that's a good question.
The only limit is your imagination.
That's a fantastic question to leave our listeners pondering. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Tkinter frames. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep creating.